Chapter 1. Introduction to all of this, or why does change need to happen? I'd like to have you imagine something as you begin this book. Read or listen to the next paragraph slowly, and take the time to imagine the scene in your head. Imagine laying in bed the day after a massive test or presentation. You spent all night tossing and turning, worrying about how well you did. Your neck feels stiff and sore. The night seems to be endless as your brain just keeps replaying the same thoughts over and over and over. After what seems like an eternity, the sun begins to rise, lighting your bedroom ever so slowly through the window, and you can't believe you were awake all night without getting any sleep. Some music begins to play from nearby. It's not your favorite music, but it's still the kind of music that makes you smile every time you hear it. As you smile, you feel your body soften a bit. Your head sinks into your pillow just a bit further. Your muscles go limp. Your eyes gently close. You begin to feel your bed envelop you like the soft, pillowy pad that it is. You drift off to sleep, finally. Now, if you are like most people, the first few sentences of that paragraph might have made you tense up ever so slightly. Your heart might have quickened its pace just a few beats a minute. As you kept reading and imagined relaxing, there's a good chance you really did relax and your heart rate really did slow down. I had to take the risk of putting you to sleep right at the beginning of this book, but I wanted you to notice something. Why did some words written or read by a stranger on a page in a book have an effect on your body? How was I able to reach across time and space to you and have an influence on your heart rate and muscle tension? How much control does our environment have on each of us? I'm going to tell you that it's a lot, more than you'll want to admit. You have very little real control over your body, though that little tiny bit is what matters. It matters more than anything else in this universe. By helping you recognize where you can take control of yourself, I can change the world one person at a time. And by you helping yourself, you have changed your own world for the better. We only have control over ourselves as we know ourselves. Too often, the things we don't like about ourselves dictate the most about our future actions. This book will teach you why you do what you do, or at least give you a lot of ideas of how to change it. When you know why you have acted the way you have your whole life, then you can learn to do something about it. This book is about becoming something better, about how to help others become better. I will mention habits, addictions, or behaviors that can be destructive. This book isn't here to tell you that you need to stop doing all these things right now, or even at all, ever. I use them as examples of what others have struggled with. These are things that I and those around me have wanted to change about our own lives. Please don't use this book as a manual of what you need to change. That is up to you. This is a book of why you are doing what you do, and a toolbox of ways you can change it. Countless self-help books have been written by extremely qualified people. Most of them take a narrow focus on a certain aspect of behavior or philosophy based on the narrow focus of studies of a doctor or professor or researcher. They're valuable and incredible. Very few of them tell the whole story though, and none that I've come across can tell their readers the true reasons why we all struggle with our personal problems. The root cause is always still a mystery to most people. Having strategies to improve ourselves is crucial to life on this planet. I feel that understanding what causes our problems will give us the foundation to come up with our own individual strategies to tackle our own problems. This book will give you both understanding and tactics for understanding your world and then conquering it. Too often, we look at ourselves and think we are terrible people for the mistakes we make. Why can't I get it right? Why am I so messed up when everyone around me is doing so awesome? What's wrong with me? I hate that feeling, and I hate seeing people suffering from that same feeling. The feeling that because we want something that's unhealthy or bad for us, we must be screwed up somehow. The truth is, you're normal. Given your circumstances, your upbringing, your biology, your genes, your environment, you're probably really normal. Whatever normal is anyway. This book you are reading or listening to has been created and crafted to distill the essences of so many of those other great ideas and mix it up into a delicious meal of healthy self-esteem that can teach you why you are the way you are and then give you all the ideas that exist on how to be the best you can be. This book may not be revelatory or new. It may be the same old stuff you've heard your whole life. I'm alright with that. I would hope that much of this is common sense. If it is, we're on the right path as a society. I would also hope that I've picked up some things you haven't learned and sprinkled it among these pages. If nothing else, I hope I can put distinct words to thoughts you may have had since childhood but never were able to put a concrete form to. I will get a little bit scientific on you, just a fair warning. It won't last long though, so if you're not a technical kind of person, I hope I explain things in a soft enough way that you can slug through it all the same, and maybe even pick up something useful as you do. I did my best to write as simply as possible to allow anyone of any age or education level learn from here. It may be oversimplified for those with an advanced education, and it may seem too deep for young children. I did write this so that both ends of the spectrum would learn from it and benefit from it. This book will be PG rated, though it will tackle some heavy adult issues. Throughout this book, I'll dance around the purpose of life, and you may figure it out as you read it. By the end of this book, you'll know it plainly and clearly. It's not what you think it is. It just isn't. You may not like it at first, but let it grow on you, and you'll realize how important it is to understand for your happiness and everyone else's. I've never found a counselor, therapist, life coach, or self-help guru that said it. There are plenty of people who instinctively know what it is, but never thought of it in such grand terms. I've heard plenty of scientists recite it, but only as an abstract concept that didn't mean anything for themselves. If this book is enough for you, I would love to know about it. If it serves as a stepping stone for you to get the help you do need from somewhere else, I would also love to hear about it. Find me on Facebook and send me a private message or a post or whatever. If I missed something important or crucial, congratulations, I'd love to know what I missed. I've experienced a few ups and downs in life. Divorce and the loss of access to my kids for an extended period of time, even after giving up on personal dreams to focus on my family. I spent a great deal of time researching more about running a business and being an entrepreneur than just about any of my colleagues, only to struggle with my business and its too many storms to handle for it to be profitable in any way for 4 or 5 years before ending in bankruptcy. Bad habits and addictive behaviors that contributed to a first failed marriage, despite doing everything I knew how to overcome them in healthy ways. Numerous job losses, other failures that have kept me and my family in poverty and burdened by growing, insurmountable, crushing debt, despite dedicating much more than the standard work week to escape it and serve my employers and patients. I still have huge amounts of inescapable student debt. I haven't been able to make a dent in it, let alone save for any sort of future or retirement. I haven't even been able to keep it from getting worse as interest accrues. Our family has no other debt than student loans, we budget like crazy, and have generally followed sound Dave Ramsey financial advice the entire time. I'm balancing a new and amazingly wonderful wife, 2 families, to a total of 5 kids, 2 or 3 jobs at a time sometimes. I exercise regularly and stay physically healthy, and I've written this book. I've also stayed active in my community, church, and profession, all without drugs, alcohol, or many of the other common addictive crutches that just about all of us depend on to get through all of this. I won't claim to be perfect in any way, and I'm sure you'll find lots of imperfections in this book. I have many of my own flaws and weaknesses, and I still need my own escapes from the stress of life. I've worked with therapists, support groups, and even worked as a facilitator of support groups for quite a while. I've been a little obsessed at times with overcoming these flaws so I can maintain what good I found in my life, and that's my ultimate goal. Staying healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically so that I can live and keep working longer than most people live and work is what I'm committed to. I've been gifted with a childhood that taught me how to have a strong mind and brain and a healthy body. Add to that an incredible education in the biological and health sciences, a career that focuses on keeping people healthy in any way I can while dealing with their crippling fears, and a persistent fascination with all of science and all of religion, and you get this book. There have been too many times where I've thought that I was worth more dead than alive, where the pain of my own failure and heartache has been almost more than I can stand to live with. Times where I would go out for a walk to clear my head and not know if I was coming home at the end of it. Times where the fear of failing again have been crippling and paralyzing. There was a long time where I had to fight the temptation to step into traffic and end it all. When I managed to beat back that temptation, I still wished and prayed for some other accident to happen to me that would end my life for me. Yet for some reason, or reasons, I'm still here, and I've been writing this book through all of it. It is equal parts therapy for myself and a desire to lead others out of the darknesses we all face in life. We need each other, you and I. Yes, I need you, and you need me. And you and I need friends and family, and when possible, a committed spouse or partner and kids. We all need neighbors and a community, a society, and a country to belong to. As much as some of us would like to be alone, to go escape off the grid or retreat into our prepper-style nuclear fallout EMP-proof basement, we need to help the people around us, and we need their help in return. Even if for no other reason than to have them help you build your fallout shelters, though that would give away your secret. Humanity thrives by creating connections with each other, like a fabric. A hole or a tear in the fabric in the form of a natural disaster or societal disaster may be devastating to large areas of the fabric. As we recuperate and rebuild from these events, we can heal those tears in the fabric of humanity to become even stronger than before. Maybe we can barely tolerate even the few people we have to interact with at work and would rather enjoy the company of our pets. Perhaps we can't stand being alone, and the thought of going home to an empty apartment or house at night is deathly scary. So we stay up all night, often participating in questionably unhealthy pastimes, surrounding ourselves with others who need company as badly and desperately as we do. Sometimes we like our neighbors only a few feet away. Sometimes we like them a few miles away. We all need them at whatever distance we're comfortable with, and deep down we all want them to some degree, even if it's for the sole reason of having people that we can make money off of or use to fulfill our needs we can't meet on our own. So when our family, friends, neighbors, community, country, or other humans around us are doing stupid things that mess with our life, we want them to stop. We often try to force them to not be stupid anymore. We want to fix humanity. We want to fix everybody else. The nearly universal goal of every young adult venturing out into the real world full of ideals and big dreams for the future is to change the world. We see the world as full of problems and suffering, and we want, at some level, to alleviate and lessen that suffering and to make some meaningful impact for the better. Around 1624, an English cleric penned the line, "No man is an island," in a book of his writings. Western society seems to like that line a lot because we still keep quoting it a few hundred years later. It means that we cannot exist by ourselves as much as we'd like to think we can, and what we do to ourselves has an effect on others as much as we'd like to deny that it does. In 2010, I had a death grip on my cell phone. It was my crutch. I couldn't live without it. I was living a 5 or 6 hour drive from my nearest family members, trying to survive my last year of school on my own. Not long before, within 1 week, and without warning, I had gone from coming home from school each day to my wife and 2 kids to being completely alone in an apartment full of memories of them and facing an impending divorce. My cell phone quickly became my emotional lifeline to supportive family and friends. It was my connection to the outside world, at least outside of school. I couldn't even communicate with my classmates and friends easily without it. One night I misplaced it for a few minutes and about had a panic attack. It was a rough time. Even while still taking full-time classes in an intense graduate program, my first wife and I were just about to complete a foster adoption program. In addition to our own 2 kids, my wife had a strong desire to adopt a child, and the San Francisco Foster to Adopt program seemed the best way to do it. We skipped out on family events to attend the required classes. We read a ton of books, including How to Parent the Hurt Child and Parenting with Love and Logic. There were several mandatory meetings with counselors and psychologists. We were only 1 meeting away from completing the program and starting to look for kids to adopt through the foster program. In meeting with these counselors, it became clear our life rocked. At the same time, as cool as I thought our life was at the time, we had some deep issues start to surface that needed addressing in our marriage. Or, through the meetings, I at least found and recognized some personal issues and unmet needs inside myself that needed addressing with my wife. So I started looking for help. As I tried to shed these things from myself, it scared my wife bad. And she left, unexpectedly and without warning. My world collapsed. The divorce was finalized in another state in less than 90 days, with my kids too far away from me to see them more than once a month while I was trying to finish school. My student loan debt was so high, I couldn't dare quit school and expect to earn enough in any other career to pay back the student debt, so I had no choice but to slug it through and finish. I felt so stuck and alone. And in that loneliness, I realized how much I needed other people in my life. I'd always been proud of being self-reliant, of standing on my own 2 feet, of being resourceful and independent. I realized how terribly pathetic a lifestyle that was. Without needing to depend on people outside my family, my life had been built around my life with a wife and kids. I probably put too much value on myself into my own little family. I realize now that this added to many of those issues I was now having to deal with, and my world crashed, and I wished and worked and wished and worked and tried my best to make it change, to put my world back together. I failed pretty miserably. There's a lot more to the story than just this, of course, and that's a story for another time and place. I learned that I couldn't change the world without changing myself, and that as I changed myself, my world got better. If the world around us is awful, we need to take a careful look inside of ourselves to find out why. If the world around us is amazing and we can't understand why anyone would think otherwise, we need to take a careful look inside ourselves and figure out why we can't understand those around us, who need our care and understanding. Since there are those who are absolutely convinced that the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and there are also those who are absolutely blown away in constant amazement about the world around us, that tells me that the problems with the world lie mostly in our perspectives and our own focus. I know the world isn't perfect, and the natural order of things tends to be a destructive one, except for the fact that for the past 4.5 billion years, as near as we can tell by looking at the dirt and rocks around us, life on Earth has tended towards becoming more complicated and specialized the entire time. For whatever reason, an incredible combination of special circumstances has allowed life to get better and better and better at adapting and surviving. And we do this by each of us changing our own world and environment around us, hopefully also for the better. I can't claim to know all the ways to accomplish this, but you'll find the most ideas in this book. I'd even be bold enough to say you won't find more of them in such a condensed form as this book will be. You'll love it, just you keep reading and see. A lot of us will feel like we don't fit in a lot of the time. That's pretty normal. And we won't ever always fit in for various reasons. To be unique doesn't always mean to be weird or non-conforming. Every time we try to stand out from everyone else, all we're doing is just joining another group, maybe a smaller one. We are each unique because of the combination of ways we conform, not because we never conform. It would be impossible to be truly unique from everyone else. We are each unique because there's a mix of things we like and do that is unique to us alone. And yet we need to fit in if we want any sort of relationship. We need to adapt ourselves to fit with other people, and they should do the same for us. It's a tricky balance, and most of us are off balance most of the time. It's the constant effort that keeps us close, that makes life work. For some of us, life will be worse than others. Some of us will have it far, far worse than others. We are all born into different circumstances with different abilities, different talents, different parents and families, different environments, different educations, and different ways of thinking. There's no way we can enforce any sort of equality onto every living person. Even siblings raised in the same home with the same opportunities can't hope for equality in life. And so we try to soften those inequalities a bit. That's a good thing, as long as we realize that some of our inequalities are what can make humanity the coolest thing ever. Those who are on the low end of life, their struggles and the training and wisdom they get in the struggle are irreplaceable and often unachievable in any other way. As Thomas Stanley pointed out in his book, The Millionaire Next Door, there's a good reason why most millionaires are first generation. Those that learn to earn that kind of money have a very difficult time passing on all of their hard-earned lessons to their kids. You can teach kids to earn money and how to use money, but you can't teach them the fortitude and endurance without letting them fly free on their own, which most parents have a hard time doing. For those on the upper end of a rich life, their abilities and talents and intelligence can be incredibly helpful to all those around them if they share it. The positions of employment they create are hugely beneficial. The products they create to improve our lives help immeasurably. Those of us on the lower end, living paycheck to paycheck while we budget and live cheap, count every penny, and still fall further and further behind, hopefully, we're teaching our kids how to work hard and manage their money and personal habits well. We're developing in them an appreciation for their work and money and small luxuries they couldn't appreciate in many other ways. Hans Rosling, in his various talks, presentations, and his book, Factfulness, points out that there are not developing and developed nations anymore. There are really 4 levels of prosperity. And right now, most countries around the world exist in a middle-class type of existence, types 2 and 3. It's in great part because of the mix of help from the upper-class countries and the hard work and determination of those who've grown up in the lower-class countries to make their home a better place. The world still has many problems that need fixing, but has gotten incredibly better, even better than the great majority of people believe. I have always found it wonderfully impressive that low-income families drive so much of our culture. In junior high school in the mid-90s, a lot of my friends started shopping at thrift stores to buy their clothes. It became really cool and trendy to have thrift store clothes or go thrifting, finding these cheesy t-shirts or some really eccentric pair of pants. Over the next 10 years, it became harder to find cool clothes at thrift stores as more and more people took to the pastime. And then, clothing manufacturers and fashion designers began selling designer clothes that mimicked the thrift store shirts, the pre-worn jeans and faded t-shirts with made-up funny logos or vacation destinations on them. 80s ringer t-shirts came back in style for a while. It's like people on a budget will still do what they can to remain relevant and sociable, which then becomes popular, and then high-income people begin imitating it as well. And then low-income people try to find ways of imitating the expensive stuff, or rebel and create something new. Dr. Seuss nailed it exactly with his story about the Sneetches on the beaches. We all want to stand out from the other people, but we all want to fit in too. It's in these gifts given to each of us, rich or poor, by the world around us that we find joy and happiness for this life. It's in growing and becoming better than we currently are that life becomes really deeply rich. When we are growing mentally and emotionally, then financial and physical setbacks won't keep us down forever. We find some way to deal with them and often even overcome them, learning more in the process. And in doing so, we change the world for the better, mostly. What holds us back from adding to the world, from improving the human condition? Or what slows down our giving? What makes it so difficult to find good employees or to be a good employee? What makes it so hard to find a good partner or spouse, or to be a good partner or spouse? Why do so many stupid people end up in the news? Florida man, I'm looking at you. Why do we do such awful things to each other? Why is this world so awful to so many of us? Why is life hard? Why do bad things happen to good people? All of us feel a sense of injustice when bad things happen to good people, or when good things happen to bad people. Even many animals have a sense of fairness and justice. There's a famous experiment done with monkeys where one monkey was given a boring food item while the monkey in the cage right next to it was given a delicious fruit. The first monkey sees this injustice and demands the good treat. When he's refused and turned down, he angrily throws his own food on the ground. He would rather go hungry than be treated unfairly. He is being treated unfairly through no fault of his own, and he is willing to hurt himself to deal with it. How often do we do that to ourselves? When we are hurting, we hurt ourselves more. So what does this mean? God, or nature, does give us more than we can handle. Life is hard. Life is awful. Disgustingly awful. When the Buddhists say that life is pain, they're not wrong. I've heard too many times at church that God will not give us any challenge we can't handle. I understand that the purpose of this statement is to give courage and encouragement to people going through a rough time. There's a lot of wisdom behind that idea, but I feel it's still wrong. Life is more than we can handle. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way. The first man and first woman who learned to overcome human nature and think and reason beyond their genetics, to learn good from evil, the legendary Adam and Eve, the crux of their story is that they had to deal with more than they knew how to handle in the face of deceit or misinformation, and they made a bad choice. Just to be clear, life will be overwhelming at times. It will be more than you can handle. You will drown and sink at least a couple of times in your life. Circumstances beyond your control will smash to pieces all the things you've worked hard to build. You will not be able to keep up. Life coaches, motivational speakers, and the rich and famous and successful people who will tell you that if you just work hard enough and smart enough, you can achieve what they've achieved, or something like it, are full of themselves and completely ignoring the incredible circumstances and gifts they were given to get them there, even if those gifts came in the form of crazy difficult challenges they had to deal with. Yet, we still can learn from them. You need to know that you will fail completely and totally at times. Be okay with that. You will somehow still be alive when you know you shouldn't be. You will see plenty of people who weren't nearly as lucky as you to survive what you did. This world is not fair. It cannot be and will not be. Most of us will try to make it a little bit fairer, and that is good. But even those of us who try to make it fair will still have to deal with some of the greatest injustices imaginable. The true nature of our character is only brought out into the light when we have to deal with more than we can handle. What do we do when life gets really, really sucky? When it is completely and totally unfair? Only by going through something like that and working our way through that muck can we begin and start to learn who we really are. It will be more than we can handle, and we'll fail miserably at handling it. We will repeat the actions of our primeval ancestors. We will have succumbed to nature. It will happen to all of us, eventually, as the universe takes back hold of us and wears down our body through its endlessly persistent aging. Isn't this such an uplifting part of the book? Entropy will win and chaos will reign, despite our best efforts. Bad things that we can't handle will happen to us no matter what. What do we do then? If you pick up your face and you stare down that darkness and decide that in the face of overwhelming defeat, you are still going to keep rising up, you are on the right track. And it may take some time before you figure out how or even why you should pick yourself up in the face of all that. No one should ever feel bad for failing, and no one should ever feel bad for not wanting to get back up. But if there's any desire inside of you to want to get back up, even if you don't know how or why you should, this is a start, and eventually you will begin to see the true nature of yourself and those around you, and you will be pleased. My dad made all of us learn and recite often the poem Don't Quit by John Greenleaf Whittier, which has this great line, "Rest if you must, but don't you quit." Rest if you must. It's so easy to blame other people for our problems. Ridiculously easy. How easy is it, you ask? It's so easy, almost all of us do it without even realizing it. It takes mental energy, education, and lots of practice to stop doing it. For many people, it's the natural reaction to life's problems. Have any of you seen that Disney movie, Meet the Robinsons? There's the scene where the low-life bowler hat guy, who's done nothing but grumble about his wasted life compared to the world-changing inventor Cornelius Robinson, says to young Lewis, let me see, take responsibility for my own life or blame you. Ding, 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 ding. Blame you wins hands down. This need to blame others usually stems from our personal problems, our own weaknesses, our own addictions, our own compulsions, and our own selfish desires. These are the killers of our relationships that only add all the more drama to our lives and cause problems among our neighbors, locally and internationally. I'm not advocating that everyone become a Mother Teresa or Gandhi. We can't, and they had their fair share of problems too. The world would stop functioning. What we can do is use our own gifts and talents to help others in our own unique ways, from our own unique positions. And we will have to rely on others' help in the same way, all while retaining our own individuality. That's tough to do. There is a biblical commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, or love others as much as we love ourselves. The commandment isn't to give up everything you own and possess to others who may or may not take such gifts for granted. The admonition is to treat other people as well as we treat ourselves. No better, no worse. That is a tough challenge to meet, and it takes practice. But it's made infinitely harder when we give in to pure biology, instincts, bad habits, addictions, compulsive behaviors, or personal indulgences that keep us from helping both ourselves and others. Or, even if we have that ability to help others, they may not be able to receive it because of their own weaknesses, addictions, and bad habits, and more. Many of us have no problem thinking about our own personal needs. It's learning to care for others that's the challenge. Some of us have an easier time thinking about others. You all know the type, the nice guy or gal who's always bending over backwards for others while they starve themselves emotionally or physically. It's taking care of themselves that's the hard part, and that comes with its own set of challenges that need to be fixed. Being in the position to help others as we help ourselves requires overcoming our own nature, our own biology. This book will talk about some of the big problems in human nature, but I hope that you can apply it to any aspect of your life that is keeping you from succeeding, or that is hurting your loved ones or those around you. This book is based on a number of things, whether it's common knowledge, easy to find research, anecdotal accounts, or a healthy measure of personal experience. Any research I cite is readily available in numerous locations, and any personal stories I quote are given anonymously to protect those who told them. As much as possible, I included as many sources in the appendix of this book. This book tackles the complex idea of bad habits, personal weaknesses, or addictions, and how our biology and nature is affected by them, and how those things affect everyone around us. All those things that make us human. If all that any of us had were only minor weaknesses and flaws, we would still have some large global issues. When we repeat our own minor flaws through families, neighborhoods, cities, nations, and the planet, those minor flaws among all of us get magnified into large societal problems. Multiply even a handful of these societies and their problems together, and you get this big, messy soup that is humanity. And since many of our flaws, weaknesses, and bad habits are not really as minor as we'd like to believe, our global and societal problems are huge. Unfortunately, we can't do much about other people's problems. We can really only fix our own problems. We can inspire others to want to change, usually by getting better ourselves, but if anyone feels like their individuality or freedom is being trounced on, they will push back, sometimes with a vengeance. We can only solve humanity's problems by working on our own. Hence, the title of this book. I don't want this to be a purely personal improvement book or a self-help book, nor do I want it to be an addiction recovery book. I want this book to teach everyone a little something more about themselves and about human nature in a way that inspires us to go help others, to love others, and help us all work together towards a better world. This is a society help book that focuses on the root cause. The very basic, most simple seed to all problems in society starts with individuals, and since we can't erase individuality from humanity, we need to understand it and understand ourselves. I'm going to use a very broad definition of the word addiction. You don't have to call your own problems, flaws, bad habits, or weaknesses an addiction. You may not even consider it a problem. I had to call them something, and calling a thoughtless, compulsive, negative behavior anything else seems to downplay its seriousness. If you are free from any addictions or problems or bad habits of any kind, I hope you enjoyed this book all the same and find something in it that will help you, your family, or your neighbors if they are looking to improve their lives and have asked you for your help. Perhaps you'll be able to add to the knowledge in this book to help others by writing your own or joining the conversation about it. If you have a bad habit or addiction you can't seem to kick, join the club. Quitting some of those addictions is impossible without the help of others. We need each other. For a great while, I ignored my own addictions by not recognizing them as such. To me, they were just bad habits or weaknesses I was trying to find my way around. After trying everything I could think of to stop it, I began to suspect what I had was an addiction, or that I had a habit similar to an addiction. When I'd listened to other recovering addicts speak at church, school, or elsewhere, I could relate to them on so many levels. What kept me blind from recognizing the seriousness of my own problem was a limited definition of addiction used by most scientific organizations. They went along the lines of a behavioral trait or use of a substance that causes the person to suffer negative consequences such as the loss of a job, relationship, physical health, etc. I hadn't lost any of those things from my poor choices, from my compulsive weaknesses. I hadn't lost a job, a relationship, health, or educational opportunities during the practice of my addiction. I decided I must not have a true addiction, just a bad habit. The other thing that kept me blind from recognizing the seriousness of my own problem was convincing myself that I was clear-headed and acting normally and treating others normally, when really my mind was under the influence, even when I hadn't indulged in several days or weeks or even months. The problem had put a filter on my mind that kept me from recognizing its effects in my life. I thought that my behavior was normal and acceptable and not hurting anyone else. Sustaining this filter so I could keep my life socially acceptable robbed me of so much mental energy that I can only wonder what I missed out on. A lot of the nonverbal cues like body language, tone of voice, and the importance of facial expressions were often lost on me because of either immaturity or being impaired by the energy it must have taken to keep my own problems behind their curtains. In other words, the energy my mind used to keep its addictive behaviors under control in public used up valuable resources that would have helped me excel even more than I already had, and it had also prevented me from growing, developing, and maturing in ways that I should have long before. But no matter what I tried, how much I cared, whatever methods I used to avoid my own addiction, which was getting noticeably worse to me, even though I'd managed to hide it from family and friends, I couldn't stay away from it for more than a few months. I'm not going to tell you what my addiction was, or is. One of the most important ideas about overcoming any imperfection, any flaw, any weakness is having the privacy to work on our own problems and only having to involve others as needed or wanted to overcome it, and most importantly, those directly affected by it. Embarrassingly, sometimes we get called out publicly on our bad behavior. That stinks, and we have to deal with that as best as we can. In reality, my addictions have changed forms more than a few times over my life, and in overcoming each, I learn more and more about myself and about everyone else. Ironically enough, I lost health and relationships, and my professional career was seriously threatened, not while I was indulging or acting out, but when I finally began my recovery. It was the attempts at recovery that threw my life out of whack. I've seen this happen to many people. I've met doctors addicted to opiates for so long that when they try quitting, their family members think they are starting to abuse. I've had friends who are only caught once they try to escape their problems. I don't say this to keep people from getting help. Going through those changes and getting the problem taken care of is and was ultimately worth it, much like going through a painful surgery to remove a tumor or infection. The great majority of people are still caught in their addictions while they are acting them out, and in many ways, that can be a harder way to achieve sobriety. Having to start recovery or self-improvement because of the coercing of family, friends, or the law is not easy. No one likes to be told that their bad habit is dumb. Most of the time they already know it, but they don't think it's important enough to change, or they would have done so already, and they don't have the knowledge or help in place to replace it with something better. By now, you're reading this and thinking that somehow you got sucked into an addiction recovery book. Yes, it's true, you'll read a lot about addictions and bad habits. The reason why is because the problems that hold us back are the problems that hold the world back. On the flip side, the behaviors and skills that overcome our addictions and bad habits will also propel the world forward. If you're an amazing person and never have to encounter a personal demon of your own, you could still use these ideas to improve yourself into stellar person mode, or you could use these ideas to help those around you. I've learned that there are a great many addictions out there, and most are not yet recognized by society or professional organizations, and that's okay. Try convincing people that diet sodas are addictive and bad for them. You'll get almost nothing but resistance and even hostility in bringing it up or suggesting it. Even when they freely admit that they're addicted, there's still no pressure on them to do anything about it. Addiction will mean something different to each of us. When I describe the idea of addiction, I mean anything that we feel we should not be doing due to the destructive qualities or potential of it, but we cannot avoid it or don't even want to avoid it without some sort of help from others. Put simply, something we know is wrong, but we do it anyway. Like I said earlier, this is a broad use of the word addiction, and some may claim that using such a broad definition can be harmful. But for those I've worked with, the broader definition allows for more people to get the help they want. That idea is what saved me. I was reading several articles about free choice, and a theme stood out to me that sometimes a person, through events that have happened to them or choices they have made on their own, have lost their ability to choose how they are going to respond to their environment or what's going on around them. When our more primitive biology trumps our higher reasoning skills. This is known as an addiction. This idea is the very thing that saved me. I am an addict. I needed help, and it's not all my fault, though a lot of it was for sure. Whoa. And there are lots of other people out there kind of like me. I'm not alone. I don't have to beat myself up emotionally or psychologically, and I shouldn't do the same thing to others. I can be nice to myself and everyone else, even though we all behave despicably sometimes. But first, I needed help. I went in search of that help, and in the process, lost just about everything that was important to me and almost everything material that I owned. All that I retained were most of my blood family relationships, a few friends, and my education and experience. And yes, those are worth more than anything. What I have gained since then, I don't know that I could or would trade for anything. I've rebuilt my life almost from scratch, and while it doesn't look like much to most people right now, it seems incredible to me knowing where it came from. I'm still in the hole, and I still am dealing with the natural consequences of my problem and the difficult situation it's put me in. But I can deal with it with a clear head and a clear conscience most of the time. And to me, that is like having a superpower. The confidence I have, the emotional intelligence I've gained, knowing what I know and feeling the way I feel, is the greatest source of strength I have ever known. The experience and knowledge I've gained and shared along the way is phenomenal. As a kid, I loved science. I loved astronomy, learning about the stars, black holes, quasars, pulsars, nebulas, planets, everything. I was fascinated with nature, with insects and oceans and plate tectonics. I remember as a 10-year-old proudly pointing out to my family at dinner my self-made observation that animals have a lot of the same bones we do. Near the end of college, I had a moment of revelation. I'd taken physiology and anatomy, as well as chemistry and molecular biology. During a biochemistry lecture, I had this moment in class where I realized I could picture in my head and make sense of everything from the smallest particles we know of, all the way to the largest galaxies and clusters in the universe. Since then, I've also studied psychology, religion, history, and a whole lot of human nature. I've had many similar moments where I felt I could tie in all of human existence from conception and innocence to world wars and genocides and make sense of all of it, or all of it I know of. This book is an attempt at capturing a piece of that. This book is a big picture kind of book. There will be many specifics discussed, but for the most part, it is a grand landscape of the scenery of what holds us back, or those unwanted behaviors, those things that we do that hurt ourselves, those around us, and the society we belong to. Whether you decide your problem is an addiction is up to you. There's no defining point that will be the same from person to person. To me, an addiction is something harmful to myself or others that I can't stop doing by myself. On the outside, it looked like a bad habit, but I knew I couldn't stop on my own, and I had tried for years. I'm writing this book so that you can understand both yourself a little better and everyone around you a little better, especially when people are acting irrationally. I would argue that we all think and act rationally all the time, or really almost all the time. It may not seem rational to other people, and the general consensus in society might be that a person was not behaving rationally in a given moment. But to that person in that moment, what they were doing makes perfect sense to them at that moment because of 1. The information they had, 2. The functioning of their mind, and 3. What they could do about the situation. All 3 of those things are planted into us by our circumstances, our thoughts, our actions, our upbringing, our hormones, our own peculiar fears and addictions, our physical health, our emotions, the people surrounding us, and our culture throughout our life. There is some ability to make choice mixed into that, and it's incredibly important. But I would argue that it's actually a relatively small amount of choosing that actually happens. Most of our choices, or what we think are our choices, are the easy no-brainers. Really, our emotions and our intelligence choose for us, with an answer that seems like the obvious choice, and then we take credit for being so wise and righteous. Our own universe is our own universe, and we are at the center of it. It will be at least a bit different universe than anyone else's, and the more we can understand our own and someone else's actions and thoughts and feelings, the more we can make our own universe and their universe just a bit more like the real one. Understanding ourselves and each other will do more to build humanity and society than anything else. This book will teach you to understand others. Humanity has thrived because of its ability to cooperate within itself and with its surroundings while preserving individuality. Humanity is the most capable form of life this planet has ever seen. No other single species has been able to do so much with the dirt and water around us than humanity has. This ability only comes because we can work together, share our knowledge, and help each other while promoting and preserving individual gifts and experiences. Working together involves avoiding destructive behaviors while holding on to and promoting constructive and productive behaviors. The circumstances, philosophies, and behaviors that harm us as a society, as a species, as a culture, do so by either dispersing large groups of us or fragmenting our communities and overvaluing individuality. We are also harmed by going too far the other way and eliminating the value of an individual and overvaluing the community. Both the community and the individual have to exist together, and our brains are wired to do exactly that most of the time. Anything that causes us to look at other people as being slightly sick or twisted only makes us slightly more sick and twisted ourselves. Anything that compels us to look at another group of people of any kind with disdain of any kind is ultimately bad. We have to gain knowledge, we have to learn, and we have to gain experience for ourselves and learn of the experiences of others and put it all together as best as we can if we want to make this world a better place. This isn't going to be a religious book, though I will refer religious ideas throughout it so that we can all understand each other a bit better and recognize that most of us are working towards the same end to make the world and ourselves a better place. There's a common argument that without the hope for heaven or the threat of a God, why would we be altruistic? Why would we want to improve ourselves or help other people? What would be the point? Why use our own energy for someone else? Why make sacrifices of ourselves for others? Unless there's a reward for being good, why be good? Biology and science show just as many reasons for this as religion does, and I'm fine with that. There's an argument that since we can never be truly satisfied with our life, we must be meant for another, higher, better life. While I like the idea, the truth is, if we could be satisfied with life, we would stop living, or at least stop doing anything. Never being fully satisfied is what keeps us alive and growing and working, either for ourselves or for others. While I may reference religious ideas and principles in this book, I'm not going to try to convince you to believe the same way. This isn't the book for that. You don't have to believe in God to be a good person, and I don't expect you to believe in God just because I said to. Being good? Yes, I hope to help you be more of that. Where we find God, we also usually find rational scientific reasons for something to exist. And where we find rationality, we also find reasons to believe in God. To me, the universe is inseparable from the God who's represented by it. Where we find rationality, we also find God or goodness, and vice versa. Because of this philosophy, I tried to look for the rational reasons why faith and religions have their peculiarities and unique doctrines and beliefs. And I also see the miracle of life as something that makes perfect scientific sense in this enormous universe. It is incredibly rare and mind-blowingly amazing at the same time, and we get to be a part of it, however it came to be.